Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Well, it's hay fever season. Everyone's sneezing and has dry eyes. Hay fever, also known as rhinitis or rhinitis, is that allergic reaction some people have in the summer. You have dry eyes, an itchy throat, a runny nose, and it looks like you have the common cold. It's caused by pollen in the air, and many people here really suffer from it. Today, I really wanted to be outside to describe a building for you, but as I got outside, I realized that pollen was very high. My eyes were itching, and I thought to myself, I think it's better that I go to a coffee shop and I can talk to you more about the concept of learning. It's also very windy outside, and because it's very windy, I kind of felt like, when you're going to board a plane and it's very, very windy. You arrive at the airport and it seems there's no wind, but by the time you get to the aeroplane, walking up the steps, it's very, very windy. I don't know why it's always like that. And there's always a man at the front with a luminous jacket who's I think the air traffic controller. And he's always being blown away with a heavy wind. It's really unclear why it's so windy when we get to the tarmac on the way to the aeroplane, but that's how I felt today. So I came to this coffee shop and I thought we would talk about the learning process instead. Some people are really surprised to learn that learning, it takes place in your mind. It's a mental process. We live in a very capitalist world where everything is traded. What we buy, the amount of money we spend, determines its worth or its value. Everything is reduced down to some kind of monetary value. And English is the same. Buy this book, and you will, of course, be guaranteed that you'll have the best English. We see books like English in 6 weeks, English in 3 months. And of course, these books are priced fairly high. The value is fairly high because we put value on them. After all, it's going to teach us in such a short time. It has a high monetary value. English is one of the biggest commodities there is. Many English teachers and English schools balance their learning with their success on a monetary scale. The amount of money you give us by buying the gold version of the lessons or buying the platinum package instead of the usual one promises higher English. Now, of course, in practice it doesn't quite work that way because, as I mentioned, learning is a purely mental thing. Many of us do think we can buy it, but it doesn't quite work that way. And some people do try to spend more money just so they can get English quicker. I had a student a few weeks ago and he kept saying, I'll pay you more money, I'll take more lessons with you if I can get English quicker. He made it kind of look like I had this supply of English, which I was going to somehow give him by attaching a wire or some kind of special Wi-Fi equipment that would transfer English from me to him. And it came as a bit of a shock when I pointed out to him that whether he pays me 1 penny or £100, it doesn't actually change anything, although the investment of £100 gives his mind a message that he's investing money, which may, of course, change the way he views learning. But the amount of money you spend on it and what you get back from that amount depends on the mental process that you have in place. Now, a lot of teachers just talk about learning when they say, oh, learn 10 words, learn the words in this essay, please just buy this book or do this thing. They don't really think about where and how the learning process takes place. And that's what I want to introduce you to a little bit today. Did you know that your mind, that place where you learn, can directly affect your body? Let me give you some examples. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think of a plate of food. It's a delicious plate of food. It has all your favorite things on there. Just take a moment to picture that. How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel hungry? Does it make you feel happy? Does it remind you of maybe your mother's cooking or your favorite restaurant? Of course it does. It changes you. Now let's bring that a little bit more. Let's bring out this idea a bit more. This time I want you to think of an apple. What do you think of? That beautiful apple. Do you want to eat the apple? Or maybe you don't like apples and you're thinking, oh, it looks disgusting. But either way, it's having an effect on you. Your body is tightening, either because you want the food and you're hungry now, or because you don't want to eat, it's making you feel sick. Either way, it's affecting your body. So that's a very simple example of how your thoughts affect how you feel. Now let's put that into a learning context. Every day I'm hearing, oh, Teacher Joseph, my English is awful. My English is terrible. I can't learn. There's some kind of barrier. There's an invisible wall. There's a glass ceiling. I can't seem to break through it, and I don't know why. And along with these thoughts, there's all kinds of negative statements. I can't. I won't. It's impossible. And of course, there's the other one, I don't have time. Of course, if you keep repeating these things to yourself, you're not going to have time. If you keep saying how bad your English is, then it's going to become that way. You know, as a teacher, when I'm faced with people telling me how bad things are, I could sit back and say, yep, your English is awful. Yeah, But usually it isn't. And also, one of us has to be able to see and imagine what growth looks like. If your English really is that bad, and I say, yeah, it's terrible, it's awful, and I'm not able to see the goodness that's there, or the growth that's there, then what happens is your English doesn't get better. In the same way as you've just imagined that delicious plate of food and what that looks like, it's really important to imagine and to think about how you're going to be using English in the future, to imagine yourself and picture yourself using English fluently. So when I'm faced with someone who says, oh, I can't, I don't, my English is terrible, I immediately reverse that thought. And I think to myself, actually, no, I'm going to see the good here and the possibility of that thing getting better. Sometimes I tell the student, but quite often they overlook that point because they only hear the negative things that I say. If I say, well, you could improve your grammar a little bit, there's a danger that they won't hear the part where I've said, actually, your pronunciation is perfect. And that's kind of forgotten. And that's because when it comes to mentally learning, we've already filled ourselves up with these ideas of how bad and how awful things are. So we need to be very careful what our thoughts are when it comes to learning. We need to approach learning from a place of purity. And what I mean by that is purity of thought. It may be that you have a lot to learn, but then so do I. And I'm a native speaker. I've been doing essays on my website called The Weekly Lesson. And I'm discovering new words about sports and about urbanization and other things that even I didn't know. So we all have learning that we need to allow to take place. But it all starts with a thought process. I don't want to get too technical about this, but I just want to say a few things. Learning takes place within the mental realm. Well, let's talk about words first of all. What do words represent? What comes before words? Well, I suppose physical action. Physical action, maybe like our prehistoric ancestors used to do, they used to communicate using physicality. For example, if they were hungry, they didn't have words. They would maybe rub their belly to let people know that they wanted food. These days, it's much more of a mental thing. We use our minds to create words, and we express those words to let people know how we feel. But what's the next level up from that? What do words represent? Well, they represent an active principle, which is communication. And where does that go? Communication leads to harmony. And that takes us into the realm of spirituality and infinity and other realms of thought, which is too deep for a podcast like this. There is a proverb in English, and it says that a fountain can go no higher than its source. How the water is pumped under it will determine how high the fountain goes. And it's kind of the same with your learning. If you get your thought process right, well, you can go anywhere you want with your learning. It'll become relatively easy. But if you're the kind of person who's holding yourself back, your mind, your brain, in the thoughts that you're having, if they're not correct, then you can do yourself some damage there, particularly with learning. And you have to be very careful with that. So today is a good day for you to examine what positive thoughts you're having about your learning, and just to use your imagination to see what that's going to look like in the future. Try to picture the good. Try to see where you want to be. Imagination is an incredibly powerful tool, and you need to use that when you're learning, even if it's just to show yourself the possibilities or where exactly you want to be, and what talking like a native, what it actually looks like. Some people have a lot of mental agitation. They get very nervous, they get upset, especially with learning. Some days, the road just seems really long and you think, you know what? I really don't feel like learning today, or today I'm feeling just how bad my English is. If you do feel like that sometimes, don't forget that every mental picture you make is being registered. And what that means, not that it might come out in your body, although it might do, it'll certainly come out of your mouth if you really believe that, but it'll first directly come out in your brain because you'll start having low level thoughts. Oh, this is bad, this is terrible. And then after that, of course, your learning isn't going to improve. Remember, your mind is like a mirror. And whatever thought you're having today about your English is probably not true and is probably going to be reflected on how well your learning progresses. It comes out physically in your mind as saying, oh, I can't do this, or this is terrible. But when we were children, we saw all the possibilities and not in negative ways. These are just a few things for you to keep in mind today. Just start to notice your thoughts about your learning. And when you get a negative thought coming up, it might not be coming from your experience of learning. If you're anything like me, it might be remembering your school days. And for me, they weren't very pleasant. And from what I've heard, for many of you also. Learning should be joyful and fun. And if it's not that way for you right now, it's probably related to your thinking or your idea of how to learn and what learning is. Well, I hope you found this helpful. And just to finish off, I just want to say, remember, just be a little bit careful as to what you allow into your thoughts, because many of you, when you're coming to me, I'm hearing the same thing. Oh, my English is terrible, my English is bad, my English is awful. It's not clear where that comes from, except a really poor self-evaluation, which usually comes from some kind of comparison to somebody else, like a native speaker. And, well, to use the phrase, Rome wasn't built in a day. That's it from me. See you soon. Bye.